This regular meeting of Grand Forks City Council to order, and can I have a motion to recess into the primary committee meeting?
So moved, Your Worship.
Majority and Smith, all those in favor? We are in the primary committee. Call the primary committee to order. As soon as I bring it up on my screen. And the first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Smith, second. Councillor Kendall, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. We have one item on the agenda this evening, and let me begin with a few comments about this. We were asked sometime after the end of April to participate in a letter that was composed by 9 mayors. At this point, that has been raised up to about 13 municipalities that are involved. The item was to be on the agenda for May 7th so that I would have an opportunity to respond at the mayor's meeting in Penticton. Because it was a late item, there was a concern about it being on the agenda without enough time for consideration, and so it's been moved to tonight's agenda, May the 28th. I am hoping that I can have some kind of feeling as to where council is with this matter of the letter and our support for it in going to FCM. What I'm not assuming is that there would be a decision here this evening on this matter, and I would expect that could be at a later date. And I have to say that looking and speaking to some of the mayors, Gregor Robertson and some of the other mayors, a number of the mayors have introduced this for discussion but have not had a final decision by their councils. And so that would be my decision. If someone in their enthusiasm wishes to put a motion forward here, they're welcome to do that. But at this point, I'm looking for some discussion of the item itself. And so, having said that, let me open with a comment. Recently, I had an opportunity to speak with some elected officials from the Slocan Valley and up north of Nelson. What they're telling me there is that the effectiveness of the Vancouver lower mainland in finding out about grow operations, the green teams, the variety of methods they have for detecting, including now the introduction of smart meters, that the growers from the lower mainland, the illegal growers, are moving out into the rural areas of British Columbia, setting up large grow operations. The last couple ones that were busted here that were in the news were up in the 3,000 plus range. This means big generators, it means big money invested, and it means that the people there are probably carrying guns and they've got security. So what's happening in the Slocan Valley right now is competition between Hells Angels and other gangs, other Asian gangs, other gangs. This is typical of what's happening throughout British Columbia. Kamloops has had a big problem with it for quite a while. But even within the larger municipal areas like Kelowna and Kamloops, the pressure is on. And so they're moving out into areas like ours here in the Kootenays, where they're looking for rural properties where they can be secluded. And I think that there is clearly a danger to our community not to recognize that this is taking place. I also look at this letter and look at the emphasis on the waste of police resources, and I'm made aware of the new contract that we have with the RCMP that includes some major increases in costs to municipalities. So I think there is some opportunity. This letter is being directed to the major parties in British Columbia, asking them to appeal to the federal body through our provincial body to look at this and to realize that prohibition has been a costly failure and that we really need to find some other way of dealing with it. That's enough from me. I open the floor to any further discussion. Councillor Wires.
So the letter you're referring to is the letter attached dated April 26th?
That's correct.
That provides 7 mayor signatures on it?
There's actually 13 at this point. That's kind of out of date since the letter was submitted around.
What did come up at the mayor's caucus that you attended in Penticton?
No, it didn't. Not on the floor. It did come up in my discussions. If you notice, one of the fellows there, or one of the mayors, is from Lake Country. There are a number of mayors that sat down and talked about it, including Gregor Robertson. So there was discussions happening at the mayor's meeting, but it was not on the table. The biggest issue at the mayor's meeting was not to deal with specifics of any issue, but to look at how the mayors might play a different role in directing British Columbia's political directions.
So we have the participation of 13 mayors out of how many in the province of British Columbia?
160.
160. Thank you.
So one of the things that's really clear in discussions at mayors' meetings, and I have to say that this was the case in discussions at this level as well, that politicians are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to discuss their opinions on it for fear that they would be labeled as being pro-marijuana and lose political support. I think that's one of the reasons that we look at as one of the things that's holding back. Would you disregard the changes that are happening in an industry around you that's bigger than the forest industry and simply refuse to talk about it? Would you refuse to talk about issues like crime and violence moving into your communities, which we know is happening? The RCMP will confirm it. Councillor Wires.
So you're looking for direction to take to FCM?
I'm looking for opinion on where this council stands with the whole issue of the items brought up in this letter, which is the only solution to this is a different approach to how marijuana prohibition is carried on in this province. We're looking at the United States right now potentially moving fairly quickly in November. Colorado is a good one to watch, but don't rule out Washington, Oregon, and California as well in terms of doing something different with the marijuana industry. So we're not leading the pack by any means at this point. At FCM, I expect that there will be other groups from other provinces that are also speaking up on this issue. I mean, it was a bit of an eye-opener for me to realize at this mayor's meeting, and it might sound a bit elitist, but people didn't elect me just to run this council meeting and run a democratic process. They elected me to be a leader, and this is the kind of thing where I think mayors should step forward and take a leadership role. Granted, 10 years ago I was a little bit ahead of my time, and I paid the appropriate penalty for that. But this is not an issue at this point that is remote to any part of British Columbia. This problem is developing throughout the country where urban pressures on medical grow-ops and on illegal grow-ops is mounting to the point where the medical grow-ops are being victimized and the commercial illegal grow-ops are being forced out into country areas. Councillor Smith.
I have to say, having read the letter and my mother having passed away from cancer and having benefited from medical marijuana, that I agree in principle that something has to be done about this on so many levels for so many reasons. I agree in principle with the letter and what these guys are trying to do.
Further comment? Councillor Wires?
But medical marijuana is legal, is it not? Right.
Yes, it is.
That's not the issue. We're looking at marijuana overall.
But I argue, and
yeah.
I'm sorry that I have to say these things, but the medical marijuana program is also a massive failure. The doctors are not signing. The patients are being victimized. The only way that some patients can get enough money to or have enough cannabis for their own use is to grow it themselves because they can't afford to buy it either on the illegal market or from government. So you have these amateur people who are already medically ill growing cannabis and being victimized by bottom feeders and rip-off artists. So that the medical program itself addressing this tremendous need. I get 2 to 3 emails or phone calls a week asking for me to help somebody who's in pain. Can't get a doctor.
I just have one comment. I guess the issue of doing something about the marijuana industry is basically a federal issue, and until it's dealt with at that level, these letters are only meant as I see it, as a grassroots support to try to pressure provincially and federally for some change. And again, I think that it's a federal issue. If the federal government decides to deal with it, institute a law as far as regulating and taxing it, then I think at that point I could make some decision about locally what we could do. But at this point, I guess the prevailing law is the way I would stand on the issue.
And my intention here is to enter into the discussions about where things are going in this province. Clearly, you're right that we're not at a stage where they're coming up with solutions to what we're going to do, but we will be soon discussing whether the production of marijuana will be in the city in a large grow operation, or whether we can look at decentralizing that and moving some of that production of cannabis into the rural areas where there will be the loss of revenue from any kind of major change in the status of cannabis and marijuana. Councillor Wyers.
Me again.
You're so enthusiastic.
Well, because the focus really is stopping the violence that's connected with the industry.
Right. I see that as our focus for decisions.
And we all know, Lord knows. I mean, I spoke with MP Alex Adamanenko over the weekend. Over the weekend, because here's a circumstance that I know of. A personal friend whose 21-year-old son is imprisoned right now in Idaho State for less than the trafficking amount of marijuana that he possessed to be labeled as trafficking in the state of Idaho. He's actually should have been sent up for possession.
Right, not trafficking.
Not trafficking. So they're working on a legal angle in that respect. But here we are right across on our border and Alex, advised me that they've got files of Canadian citizens and young people across the border sitting in the prisons. And he said, until our federal government in Ottawa recognizes, they don't even want to go there. He said, it's when you get to the federal level, that's where the gates are locked. And that's what Councillor Kendall, I mean, we've got to, yes, the lobbying has to start. And I can see where it's accelerating from the 4 former mayors of Vancouver, and then the former attorney generals have come on board. And it's not like marijuana. I see it as a ways and means to harder drugs. That's the position I hold on marijuana. And as far as prohibition, what happened 80 years ago is a hell of a lot different than what's happening today with alcohol. It's a toughie.
You see a big difference between alcohol and the prohibition that's going. You see a similarity.
I don't. It's just different times.
But the violence is the same.
The violence is worse, I think.
Worse, yeah. Now we have automatic guns. In those days, they just had single shots.
Now they take your head and your feet and your hands.
No, the violence in Vancouver is really disturbing. But you look at the base of it, it's drug trafficking. And marijuana still is the mule of the business. The marijuana growers are steady. Their supply is steady. And it's not up and down like the other hard drugs, so it continues to be the backbone of the illegal market. That's what would really make a difference would be to pull out that revenue source from organized crime. Okay, well, we have introduced it and discussed it to some extent. We've put 15 minutes in. I would be prepared to have a motion that we receive it, and that would finish the discussion for this evening. A motion to receive. Councillor Smith. Any seconder?
I'm fine to receive it as for information.
Seconder. Okay, the motion is to receive, and I'm assuming that since Councillor Krog was not here and did express interest in taking part in this discussion, that we would bring this back when he is again here, and we can revisit this issue. And I thank you very much for giving me some feedback from council. It puts me at a new level in discussing it with other mayors. At least I can honestly say it's at the table, we're talking about it, we haven't decided. Motion to receive. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.